Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be giving a review of the Nikon old school 105mm f2.8 micro lens or macro lens, depending on what kind of brand you're looking at. And this is the older version where it has the aperture ring attached to the camera and it doesn't have VR, but it's an awesome lens. So anyway, let me tell you about it. Okay, let's start off with what the hell is it? Okay, a micro or a macro lens is where you're able to focus really close to the subject. So you and the camera can get very close to it. And in doing that, you can get really detailed images of very small subjects. So if you're shooting insects, or if you're shooting bugs, or if you are doing, for example, weddings, you need to get a very close up of the ring, or if you are doing food photography, that's another good example where you'll probably want to be using a macro lens. The other thing about macro lenses is that they usually are the optically best lenses that you can get. Is that the right? Best lenses? Best lens. Anyway, so this is the slightly older version because Nikon has a 105mm with VR, vibration reduction in it, which is a new version, and it's still an f2.8, and it is an amazing lens. I 110% recommend the Nikon VR 105mm lens. But this is the cheap version. This is the old version. This is the non-VR, which I think means it's about a good 10 years old now, I think. And what I like about it is that it still has its aperture ring at the back. So for me, sticking this onto my camera, onto my Canon camera, I can use it for really cool effect in some videos if I'm wanting to use macro photography in my videos, because you can stick Nikon lenses onto Canon cameras with a small little adapter. Ooh. Okay, so if we're going to look at the size of the lens, it is a pretty monstrous lens. On the camera just now I've got a 50mm lens and this is a 100mm lens, and if you look at the size difference, it's almost double the size, amazingly. Okay, let's see what it looks like on the camera. Just now I'm using the Fuji S5 Pro, which uses Nikon lenses. It's got the same mount, so you can stick Nikon lenses on it without having any sort of adapter on it. Okay, and as we stick this on, it goes on nice and smoothly, no problem whatsoever. Okay, so the first thing you've got to know is on the actual lens, you have a button here so you can rotate it left and right. And what that does, that is the equivalent of on the side of your camera where you've got it in manual or if you've got it in autofocus. So here we've got it manual, so I have total control over the focusing. Or if I turn it so it's at A, the little dot is at A, then it is in manual focus, automatic focusing. So if I hold down the shutter halfway down, that's how quickly it focuses. So the first thing is, the newer version, the Nikon 105mm f2.8 VR lens, that has much faster focusing, and it has internal focusing. Here, this is external focusing. So the focal length doesn't change. It doesn't become 105, it doesn't become 120mm lens. What happens is that bit where it extends, that means it's focusing much, much closer. So for example, if I'm shooting over at the other side of the room, there. So that's the focus over on my microwave over there, and that you can see it's quite close in. But if I were to focus on this Nikon lens cap and just hold it just a little bit away from the camera, there, that's it nice and close. And as you can see, that's it focus on it very closely. And with 100mm or 105mm, that's quite a long distance. And to be able to have something that close, which that wasn't even its closest, but that's how close you can get to it. And what it is, it gets, once you get all the way down to its closest focusing distance, is at 1:1. Now in macro terms, what that means is that the image which is coming through the lens is exactly the same size as what is hitting the sensor. So if you have if you have this, okay, let's say we're talking about this. If you have this, that Nikon sign will be the same size from your lens that will be hitting on the sensor. And that is one-to-one macro. If you then suddenly expand that image, so you go put it on your computer and you have it big screen, then that is going to be huge, and it's going to have the detail, amazing amounts of detail. The one thing you've got to also notice about is that whenever you focus very closely, your aperture actually changes, your effective aperture changes. Although on the aperture ring or on your camera it will still say f2.8. Once you get to its closest focusing distance, because this is moved out, it's actually gone down to an f5. Yeah, so f5. So it's not an f2.8, it's an f5, which is a good 1.5 stops worth of light taken out. But if you have your camera on an aperture mode or a shutter speed mode or a program mode, you don't really need to worry about that too much. Okay, so the other thing is the speed of the focusing. So that is in, that is all the way out and back in again. So it's not the fastest, and it's actually pretty loud. But if you're using this lens on a Canon camera and you're using it in manual focus for doing video, then you don't need to worry about that whatsoever, because you will always be doing manual focusing. Now, if I were to rotate this just now, nothing's happening. And that's because I've still got this ring here on the automatic mode. So all I need to do is press that button, move that to manual, and then after a little bit of movement, you then have full control over the focusing there. And when you get to the furthest distance, it becomes hard, you can't move it any further. Bring it all the way to the closest, can't do any further. But if you put it back onto automatic, then you can move that, nothing changes whatsoever. The front of the lens as well is is a filter size of 52 millimeters, which is great. That means you can get really cheap filters on the front, and you can get a whole bunch of them, and they're not too expensive. You can get circular polarizers, quite good ones for this, and it will only cost you maybe £20 instead of if you have a really big, slightly bigger aperture, then or slightly bigger front of the lens, it usually costs a good bit more. So that's one kind of money-saving benefit. But the biggest money-saving benefit is the fact that this lens is not available anymore. And what that means is that you have to buy this second-hand. And because the Nikon VR lens is so awesome and is only around about £600 or £700, that anybody selling this lens really has to drop the price because nobody really wants to buy it. But I got this for £200, which is an amazing price because this used to be £600. So £200 for a macro quality worth of picture quality, an f2.8, a fairly telephoto distance lens, and an aperture ring, so you can use it on Canon cameras, just means, for me, it's brilliant. It's just a win-win-win-win-win situation. You also have a little bit on it where you can change the amount of focusing, so you can have it on full or you can have it on limit. So if you know that you are going to be working on faraway distances, you can just set it so there, that was the maximum it would go. It would go from infinity down to its closest there, which was 0.5, so 50 centimeters away. But then if you swap it round, let's say you put it onto limit, and let's just quickly put it onto manual, we get into the closest range, so you know you're always going to be shooting bugs or very, very close objects. And then you put it back onto limit again, so this button here, and then you press it. It will only go from its closest to 50 centimeters again, so there to there. So it means it's kind of a little bit quicker in its focusing, as long as you know whether you're going to be in short distance or far away distance. So here, nice. Optical quality of this lens is fantastic. You really cannot beat a macro lens. Macro lenses are the best that you can really get. So what you can get better than this is focusing speed. The Sigma isn't faster, but the newer version of this, the focusing will be better, and it's faster and more quiet because it's quite noisy. If you want to listen to that again. really noisy. You're definitely going to be disturbing any birds or squirrels or small insects if you've got that amount of noise coming from your camera. But for £200, honestly, absolute bargain lens. So I'd advise if any of you see this on a website or if somebody's selling it secondhand, go for it as soon as you can. It's a brilliant lens. So I hope that helps. If you've got any other questions, put them down below or put them on the blog and I'll try and reply on the blog because then most people can see them a lot easier there. Okay, hope that helps. Cheers. Bye-bye.
All of the carving season, sadly I can't. So I'm leaving Tilly with a camera to record events as they unfold.
Your eyes main the thing underneath.
Sure
It's
enough,
horrible.
just days
What do you
after I
mean?
left,
Oh,
she
little
witnesses a remarkable moment. Mother Dixie actually giving birth. Tilly names all her reindeer, and that's what she calls cigar.
Okay, now change the video function.
The last UK gig that the Sex Pistols ever played in their most famous lineup. Shortly after, they went to the States. Within a month, they'd broken up, and within another year, Sid Vicious had died.
Which one? It is. Yeah, I think so. Right, I'll have to get them out again. Right. Ah. What's the magazine called?